Chicago is no stranger to gunfire, but every once in a while, a shooting happens that doesn't fit the pattern. On a warm June night in 2025, a Chicago police officer collapsed inside an apartment building in Chatham, bleeding from a gunshot wound to her back. Within hours, officials said it was a tragic accident, friendly fire, unintentional, case closed. But behind the press statements, behind the silence, there were details that didn't sit right, because the bullet didn't come from a suspect. It came from someone standing right behind her. And what happened next would raise questions the department still hasn't answered. This is the shooting and the alleged cover-up of Officer Crystal Rivera. June 5th, 2025. Officer Crystal Rivera and her partner, Officer Carlos Baker, were part of a tactical unit working the South Side. That night, their attention locked onto a man later identified as Jalen Arnold. Officers claiming they noticed an unusually large bulk beneath his jacket. Something wasn't right. When police attempted to stop him, Arnold ran. The chase led them into an apartment building in Chatham, a tight, enclosed space where seconds matter and mistakes can be fatal. Inside that building was another man, Adrian Rucker. According to police, Rucker was armed with an assault-style rifle. What happened in those next moments would be described as chaotic, confusing, fast, and deadly. A single gunshot echoed inside the building. Crystal Rivera fell, shot once in the back.
The family of Adrian Rucker is refuting claims from prosecutors that he ever pointed a weapon at officers. The night officer, Crystal Rivera, was shot and killed by friendly fire. His family now urging authorities to release body cam video that they say will vindicate him.
And my condolences to her family, but my nephew is not responsible for her death.
Monique Reed says her nephew, Adrian Rucker, is being used as a scapegoat by the Chicago Police Department. She spoke to me after Rucker appeared in court on a status hearing Thursday.
I feel like he's being railroaded right now. He knows that I love him and we standing 10 toes down behind him.
The 25-year-old was arrested and charged in connection to last week's death of fallen officer Crystal Rivera. According to prosecutors, Rucker was inside a Chatham apartment when police came in, chasing after an armed suspect.
You're not just going to stand there because you don't know what's going on. He's inside of an apartment. He don't know what's taking place.
During that pursuit, prosecutors say police body cam video and security video in the apartment captured Rucker pointing a rifle at officers from behind a couch in the apartment. Rucker's family says he was never armed.
Release the body cam footage.
Prosecutors say the officers then kept running after the first armed suspect outside of the unit in the hallway, and that's where police say an officer unintentionally shot Rivera in the back during the pursuit. That was the only shot fired that night. Rucker ran outside, where he was later found hiding nearby. Police say he was not armed when he was arrested, but say weapons and drugs were found in the apartment. Investigators say Rucker lives in Freeport.
The officers were never in pursuit of him.
Gotcha. It was someone else.
It was someone else.
Okay.
That still to this day they have not caught.
When I asked about that police body cam video, Copa says it's still investigating. Chicago police wouldn't say if they're still searching for that armed suspect who officers were initially chasing that night. Rucker is expected back in court tomorrow.
The initial explanation from the Chicago Police Department was swift and confident. Officer Carlos Baker's weapon, they said, discharged unintentionally. His attorney would later claim Baker was reacting to a second armed man, seeking cover, when his gun fired accidentally. The narrative emphasized panic, fear, a split-second reaction. The department said Baker immediately called for help, that he carried Rivera to safety, that everything possible was done to save her life. Early reports even suggested Rivera had been shot by one of the suspects, but that story didn't survive long because the autopsy told a different one.
There are new developments on the Chicago police officer who was shot and killed by her police partner. New autopsy report just came out and it concludes that Crystal Rivera died by homicide. But Rivera's family is still demanding body camera footage from the night of the shooting. be released and calling for a public investigation into the shooting. Now, Rivera was shot in the back by our partner, Officer Carlos Baker, while the two were chasing a suspect back in June. Then just last week, in a totally separate incident, Baker was stripped of his police powers following an investigation into allegations he attacked an off-duty female cop at a bar in Wicker Park. Since then, a CBS News investigation found Baker tried to get security footage from a nearby business following the attack.
The medical examiner's findings were blunt. The bullet that killed Officer Crystal Rivera entered from behind, not from the front, not from a suspect, not from the direction police initially suggested. The ruling was clear: homicide, caused by friendly fire from another officer. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. The suspects weren't charged with murder. The danger inside the building looked different, and attention began turning toward the man who fired the shot, her partner. For Crystal Rivera's family, the department's explanation wasn't just incomplete. They say it was dishonest. In a wrongful death lawsuit filed by Rivera's mother, Yolanda Rivera, explosive allegations were laid out. Claims that suggest the shooting wasn't just an accident, but the result of ignored warnings and a rushed cover-up. According to the lawsuit, Crystal Rivera and Carlos Baker were no longer just partners. They had been romantically involved. And when that relationship ended, the family claims Baker struggled to accept it. The lawsuit alleges Rivera had previously asked to be assigned a different partner, citing Baker's reckless behavior. Warnings, they say, that were ignored. The family claims Baker failed to immediately render aid, that he never told dispatch he was the shooter, and that initial police reports falsely blamed an armed suspect for the fatal shot. If true, it would mean the story the public was told wasn't the real one.
At 11, our breaking news. The family of a Chicago police officer shot by her own partner is now suing the officer and the Chicago Police Department. Officer Crystal Rivera's family said Chicago police did not do enough to protect Rivera from an officer that they knew had a troubled past. Our Darius Johnson is in River North with new information on that lawsuit that was just filed. Darius.
Hey there, Marie. Good morning to you. Crystal Rivera's mother filed a lawsuit naming both the city and Rivera's work partner, Carlos Rivera. The 9-count, 37-page lawsuit details a romantic relationship that turned sour between Rivera and Baker, a long disciplinary history for Baker, and a police department that ignored Rivera's concerns. Take a look. The lawsuit claims Officer Carlos Baker struggled to accept the fact that Rivera broke up with him after a 2-year romantic relationship. The May breakup stemmed from his infidelity, and Rivera told him she would inform the other woman. This relationship was known amongst members of the Chicago Police Department, including 2 superiors, since September of 2023 when the relationship first began. According to the lawsuit, Rivera told other members of the department that she asked for a new partner and felt Baker could be a threat to her safety. It claims the department ignored her concerns. Lawyers say Baker had showed up to Rivera's home the day before her death unwanted. The next day, on June 5th, Rivera and Baker were chasing a suspect into a building who was believed to be armed in the East Chatham neighborhood. The suit says Baker fired a single shot, striking Rivera, who was in a tactical position behind him, and ignored training by running in the opposite direction without providing medical attention or calling for help, delaying medical services. Rivera herself, lying on the ground while shot, tried to call in her own shooting, but dispatch could not understand her as she gasped for air. The lawsuit also highlights Baker's murky disciplinary history with the department, which includes suspensions, reckless behavior complaints, and an allegation involving another woman where he brandished a gun in 2022. He was never disciplined for that 2022 incident, and for that, lawyers upstairs say Rivera would still be alive. Rivera's family stood strong yet emotional during this press conference. Take a listen to what her mother Yolanda had to say.
She accepted the risk that came with policing. What she never should have had to fear was her own partner. That betrayal cost Crystal's life.
Now this morning, I reached out to the Chicago Police Department and I have yet to hear back. I asked them specifically if Baker is still stripped of his police powers, yet still employed, and what exactly his current duties are if he is stripped of his powers, whether he's on desk duty or administrative duties. At this time, Baker, the city, nor the Chicago Police Department have responded to this 37-page lawsuit that was just filed, and her mother is asking for accountability and change.
While questions swirled around the officers, two men sat in jail. Adrian Rucker, the man police said pointed a rifle inside the apartment, and Jalen Arnold, the man whose flight started it all, but were charged heavily. Armed violence, multiple firearm charges, drug possession, serious cases, but neither was charged with killing Crystal Rivera because prosecutors couldn't. The medical examiner's ruling made it impossible. The bullet that ended her life didn't come from either man. It came from behind her, from a fellow officer. Still, both men remain locked up, facing years behind bars for what police say they were carrying that night. Meanwhile, the question lingered. Why did it take so long for the truth to surface?
Chicago's top cop says the officer who shot and killed Officer Crystal Rivera is dealing with difficult emotions, and he's urging the public not to draw conclusions about how Rivera died.
At the Northwest Side Church, where Officer Crystal Rivera was a member, the congregation is hurting.
Before she wore a badge, she wore a servant's heart.
Pastor Daniel Cruz says Officer Rivera, seen here worshiping at the church, was devout and dedicated to serving the city she loved.
She felt accomplished, and she felt that she was fulfilling a life mission and life call.
But it all came to an end Thursday night when police say the 36-year-old Rivera was unintentionally shot and killed by a fellow officer inside a Chatham apartment. CPD says the officers had pursued a suspect to that unit where a second person pointed a rifle at them. Police say only the officer's weapon was fired.
That officer is in a very, very tough place. Unimaginable what that officer has to be feeling right now.
Superintendent Larry Snelling at a Southside event leading a moment of silence for Rivera and urging the public not to rush to judgment.
There may be things that an officer sees that no one else knows at the time. And a lot of times there are assumptions made. And we don't want to assume anything. This is why we always gather the facts.
Though national numbers on so-called friendly fire or blue-on-blue deaths are hard to come by, the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund says from 2020 to 2024, of the 273 firearms-related officer deaths, only 8 were categorized as inadvertent or accidental shootings, less than 3%.
A blue-on-blue shooting can happen, and unfortunately, it happens more than it should.
ABC 7 law enforcement expert Derek Meyer, a former high-ranking official with the U.S. Secret Service Chicago field office, says CPD will conduct a thorough review.
Every day, I can tell you this, law enforcement is learning from past actions, and they are improving, and we're getting better in law enforcement.
Superintendent Snelling says any information gained from a review of what occurred will help inform future training of officers. In Auburn Gresham, Eric Hong, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
As the case drew public attention, something else happened. The body-worn camera footage that could clarify everything, was blocked from release by a judge. For now, Officer Baker was stripped of his police powers months later, not for the shooting, but for an unrelated alleged bar assault in August of 2025.
The Chicago police officer who accidentally shot his partner Crystal Rivera during a pursuit earlier this year has now been stripped of his police powers. The officer was accused of attacking a female officer at a bar over the weekend. The Chicago Sun-Times reports the department opened an internal investigation amid reports the officer had tried to meddle in the investigation. But a police union lawyer denied the officer was in a bar fight and says he did not abuse his authority. Officer Crystal Rivera was shot and killed on June 5th while she and the officer were chasing a suspect in the Chatham neighborhood. In a statement, the lawyer for Crystal Rivera's family says he never should have been on the force in the first place, saying, quote, the only action should have been to terminate his probation and ensure he never wore a CPD shield or carried a gun. Crystal Rivera would be alive today.
The timing only fueled suspicion. Today, The Civilian Office of Public Accountability continues to investigate quietly behind closed doors, and the Rivera family is demanding something rare, an independent investigation by the Illinois State Police, because they say they no longer trust the department responsible for telling the story. There are still moments missing, words not spoken over the radio, decisions made or avoided in the aftermath, reports written and rewritten. Why wasn't the shooter immediately identified? Why did earlier statements point to suspects instead? Why were prior concerns about Baker never addressed? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, if Officer Crystal Rivera hadn't been a police officer, would the truth have come out faster? Crystal Rivera put on a badge believing the system behind her would protect her. Instead, her family says it closed ranks. This case isn't just about a single bullet fired in a dark hallway. It's about accountability, trust, and whether the truth can survive when those sworn to enforce the law are the ones under scrutiny. The investigation isn't over. The footage remains unseen, and the full story of what happened inside that apartment building may still be waiting to surface. Until then, one thing is certain. Some shootings don't just take a life. They expose everything underneath. And when they do, the silence can be just as loud as the gunshot itself. Alright y'all, there y'all have it, man. That's the crazy story of Police Officer Crystal Rivera. I was not expecting her case to take that turn. Hey man, get in that comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Drillers and trappers, we outside trapping and drilling 247. Don't go nowhere. Watch that next video. Gang!